So I can print a QR code which has a token and allows now people on the site to check in. Actually told on Friday, Codex, that I want to have this feature, and it's now live. Let's see if it works, right? Yeah.
Recording in progress.
So I have the honor to give the first talk, obviously because I fucked up to get somebody else from Rust Week giving a talk on this topic, but I think I'm also capable about like do some wiping, and when I start doing it, I became very German and needed guardrails. We will hear about that. Well, that's me. I'm self-employed Rust consultant, and I also give workshops. And in this talk, I will go over a web app you all love and use and know since some weeks, which is called Meet and Talk. And there's actually a check-in feature. So we will talk about that. Then we will define a bit what is agentic programming to get a bit over the vibes. Then I will share some of my workflows and guardrails and investigate a feature PR that was like entirely built by an agent with you guys. And well, Meet and Talk, like the idea was we want to have like nice archives of our content, and we want to get notifications when somebody does some updates. So another part why I started building it, because I believe in eating your own dog food. So I was very unhappy with alternative solutions, and I also wanted to share, and we actually start doing that in the meetup, organizers meetup at Rust Week. Well, our concept, how we run these things, how we set up the tech, and so on. And well, speaking about the alternatives, one of the alternatives got bought by a company that is known for buying other companies and get like as much profits out of them as they can get. That's why there are some strange moves they do, like offering me to buy the data of other meetup organizers. Me personally, I would say, if I stop running this community and do not respond for some reason, maybe they should like close it down and not sell all your data to somebody else. But well, that's maybe just me. And yeah, I told you about that, about this meetup organizer meetup. And I showed Meet and Talk there, and that created some vibes. So I got a lot of ideas, like add a CFP module, we need multi-track conference stuff, and so on. So it was great ideas. I have some list about them, and I think I have to prioritize them. What I actually liked a lot, I was talking to Ludwig, who is running the Rust Munich meetup, and the check-in feature. There's the idea when we have like events like now, and you have a list of attendees, and you see, okay, this guy attends, but then several people don't show up. And Anne asked me, Tim, what do you think? How many pizzas do we need, or how many persons will show up? And it's always like a very lucky guess. And yeah, to help like doing predictions on that, that would be nice to have like an overview. What are the circumstances when people show up? So we talked about this check-in feature, and obviously calculating pizzas is kind of a science. So you can incorporate the weather, you can think about other events happening in the city, stuff like that. I mean, it's pretty hard for a platform like Meet and Talk to do that, but for alternatives that have a lot of data, they could probably give better predictions based on some statistical methods. Well, so that's how the check-in feature came around. And here you see like 3 ways how it looked like. I think there's somewhere also this nice thing. So when you register to Meet and Talk, you attended here, and now this is something I created in the admin front end. So I can print a QR code which has a token and allows now people on the site to check in if you like to do. So I actually told on Friday before going to the bike tour Codex that I want to have this feature, and it's now live. Let's see if it works, right? So I would just hand that out now and shortly talk about this this three screens. So obviously you have three cases. Either you're logged in on your mobile phone, which I think everybody of you are. Maybe you have to log in, or maybe you're here and you don't have an account. So if you're on the login screen and you click on the yellow thing, you could register if you like to do that. And that's like the 3 ways to check in. Here's also like check in. So I'm quite curious if people try that now and if it's actually working. Because I think when we were going for food yesterday, I told you about the plan to just put it in production and see what happens. People were like, very
many requests.
too many requests. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. There's a rate limiter, which is allowing 2 requests per second, I think, on the login. But it should, yeah, we probably, maybe we are behind 1 IP here, so that's that's a problem then.
So it works using the link in your Meetup appointment. You also have this link. Please also register to the event at Meet Talk. And using this, I'm in.
Yeah, very nice. Probably you're not checked in because for that you need like a token that's like invalidated later.
I'm checked in now.
Yeah, very nice. So let's see what happened here. So I just will jump there now, and now when we look at attendees, I think it raised, and you see that some of them are checked in. So we have this other state, right? So obviously whatever the agent did in their guardrails, and actually I checked that because I didn't want to, I wanted it to work obviously. That worked out. Now I have to find my presentation again. And maybe, yeah, what would you, like, are you open to give like is somebody open in the room to give a definition of agentic programming? Like what is on, like be bold, just say something, it's just funny. Like Henrik is moving, maybe online too, if you guys want to.
In my mind, agentic programming is like having a very low experience guy with infinite amounts of time to do stuff for me, which may or may not work.
Great definition. Somebody online wants to try to give a definition maybe. I hear something.
I was just thinking about this question because I think agentic programming is when you make like the use of AI, but with a modified, what you call a harness, so that this sort of regular chat text can become, I guess, coding or action. Mm-hmm. And it can be like constantly looping or doing something. So it could be, because of this, it gives you the ability to loop or cron or do actions, right?
Okay, like I heard like some words like harness, and that you want to keep the agent in guard. So I think that's good things. And I'm pretty sure if we ask around, people will come up with like quite different programming definitions. And when I started out, like maybe 1 year ago, to play with that in coding, what a lot of people do was like copy and pasting probably. And that's what we don't mean. So what we mean is more like having this harness. There's like an agent in the middle. It has access to your workflow. Here on the left, see the workflow. And from there, it can get aware of like stuff like your dependencies. Like it gets a lot of context out of your directory, especially if you use tools that or harnesses that know how to extract this information, like which library in which version you are using. They can use all the tools like run cargo tests. They can run cargo tarpaulin to see the test coverage. They can also do migrations, database migrations, which is like always a bit scary, right? And well, they have internet access and can look stuff up. So that's probably what is like the state today of agentic programming. I did these images with Banana Pro from Gemini, which is quite helpful if you want to change some of the texts and so on. Anyway, I have a background in like several things like computer science, a bit of chemical engineering, and I ask myself, what do we really want to achieve here? And I think we're moving now from something that is like not having a strong harness, where it's like a lot of interaction with a human being. On the left side, like that's actually also how I think most people use this tool at the moment. They do a lot with the agents, and then they do a lot of step-ins. So, I mean, the most, I don't know how to call it, like scary, frightening, hyped story was the Bond port, probably. If you are aware of it, there was like 1 million lines of code PR where Rust was written based on a Zig code base. And well, these agents did that in 6 days. I bet they tried it for a longer time and had to build up all this harness, and it's obviously more or less mimicking what is Zig doing in Rust that uses a lot of unsafe. So you need to do a lot of refactoring to get to idiomatic Rust. But in the end, they had this claim like, oh, we did that in 6 days. And that's something you would achieve when you go on to the right side. You build like a more closed loop that lets the agents interact longer with each other. Disclaimer here, we're not porting anything. We're on a greenfield project. It's like my side project. I like working on that and trying stuff out in this thing. And it obviously runs in production. It has database migrations. So what I decided was our closed loop now is a feature PR. I think that's a good closed loop to have a look on. And I was quite happy with the result so far. And wait, why was I confident enough to like sit with these 2 friends of mine yesterday and say, I will just put that in production? And in the code base, there's a lot of best practices and guardrails. So there are different layers of tests, starting with unit tests. Then there are integration tests against the database. Then there's end-to-end tests that like test how your HTML responses and what the database does. And well, I'm playing around with AI for like over a year now, and I gradually closed that loop, like, and obviously I could test it in a staging environment before running out in production. Even I think a rollback in production in this case with a database migration would be not bad, but you don't want to do that, right? And well, I also have to, I like to challenge the AI and like go in the role of a test user then. And obviously Rust is amazing for agentic programming because we can encode a lot of domain knowledge in a way that we get compile time strictness, which empowers your harness to don't let the agents get loose. Okay, I mean, I have code here. The new type pattern, this is like an idea. You just have like these types that wrap another type, and here it's a secret string that ensures that you don't leak like secrets by logging or something like that. And the idea is that you implement traits like debug and display that would do the logging in a way that there's no information if you accidentally would log this string. And then you have this method expose secret. And when you do an auditing, you can just use search and see all the places where expose secret is used. So that helps a lot to narrow down the scope, for example. And yeah, let's see. Is this enough code? What do you say? You want more? Sorry, I could not resist. Now give me one more. And that's a nice feature of Axum, where you can implement extractors on roots. So you have to remember to add this in the signature of your method that is working on the root. But what is doing is like it just implements a behavior for every root that has needs admin privileges. So if it's a get root, we forward to the login. So the admin may need to log in if it's not the admin, or if not, we just give a forbidden response here. Well, it's not so much of the new type pattern, but more like a nice way to work with Axum, I guess. But yeah. So here we should maybe go there step by step. We get like the request parts, the HTTP requests, and from that we can create a session object, which we can check on admin privileges. And then if it has that, we can say, okay, carry on. And otherwise, we return some error types. Yeah, more interesting is probably how did I do that. So most repositories have like kind of an overview file. And for me, this agent.md, it changed a lot over the course. Because at the beginning, I was putting in a lot of information there. And when I read on like blogs from Anthropic or from OpenAI, I learned that it's better to have like a very small context for the agent.md, like just 100 or 200 lines, and to use it more like a map. So I branched out this knowledge and gave more links in this agent.md. What was quite important for me is to really define the source of truth, which is the code always. And in case of dependencies, it should look at cargo toml. And this file has like some overview about the project to give an overview, what features are implemented, what are planned. The tech stack, which is Axum Ascama. Ascama is a nice template engine, which brings all the Rust type checking to HTML templates, HTMX, and the create SQLx. There's a security baseline, so for example, that it should use require admin everywhere where it's necessary, things like that. And there's also, when the agents do database migrations, there's like a extra guideline on how I want the Postgres queries to look in the up and down files. And then there are information to try to get enough context. Because when the project started to grow and I didn't have that information, it looked like the context got quite full. And if you have the ability, like in Rust, to have like modules organized by the file system, you can obviously tell the agent, okay, you just stick to that module and try to keep your changes coherent or consistent in that regard. And then to run all these tools like Cargo Clippy, the automated testing. And in the end, I always wanted to have like a small report what it has actually done in the chat window. So that's how the workflow is today. Will probably evolve because the game is changing quite fast in this region. I was using some skills. For example, I was playing around with context, which helps also with documentation and versioning. I was playing around, or I'm using GitHub skills. But I also wrote these 3 skills on my own, which is like one that does a PR review, really concentrating on the diffs in this specific PR and tries to find inconsistencies or things that need to be done better. Then there is like this refactoring spotter that really tries to see if patterns can be reused or if there's duplicated code and get rid of it. And then that's bold here for a reason, because when I tried to get this closed loop behavior on a feature PR, what the agents actually did, also I told them like, here's a plan, let's plan that for like a sequence of commits, just did it in one run. So you had like 2,000 lines of code change in one commit, and I was like, I should review that. I don't want to review that. So, well, that's only 5 lines. I share that with you. Question in the audience is, do you know Jujutsu as a version control system? Hands up if you know it. Okay, I think it's maybe like 25%. And well, it's something, how I use it, you put it on top on Git, so it's like co-located. And what Jujutsu adds is like a very good system for management of changes and rebases. So I found that to be a game changer when I had to work with many stacked PRs because review pipelines got slow, and I had to stack PRs. And when you then change like PR below all the changes, like it's much easier than using Git rebase. You should have a look if that's a pain for you. But besides that, it's similar. You add a commit, which is with JJ new, or first line. Then when it worked on the commit, it should check that this is like an atomic commit that's actually working. And JJ describe just changes the commit message. And yeah, that actually helped me then to have like a plan of 5 or 6 commits and ending up with like this many changes to the version control system. And yeah, these other skills are more like you find it in like best practices. I think there are like a lot of repositories that have those skills. So there were a persona defined for the reviewer. The common understanding is like that when the agent searches the web and it thinks it is this kind of role, it tries to research the web in a way that it finds like blog articles and papers related to this knowledge. And yeah, I wasn't a fan to give the agents GitHub access, so I moved back to just get like a markdown report in the chat. I was using GitHub skills before, but yeah, somehow moved away from it. Not sure if I will stay away, so I'm quite happy if you guys share your experiences with that. And yeah, then this refactoring spotter is more related, like there's an architecture.md and it checks that you're in line with it. it tries to find code duplication when you have like 3 or more places that do the same to extract knowledge or extract code. And yeah, to come back to this loop where we actually are chasing. So I'm not there. I have some manual steps in between, but what we actually chasing is like you have this first step where you are involved, where you come up with a specification. In our case, the check-in feature, I want to have an endpoint where I can create the check-in PR. I want to have an endpoint where people can like post themselves at checked-in. I want to be able to give the people the opportunity to log in and check in one step, or register and check in one step, stuff like that. And like this is iteratively, because normally you don't have that right the first time. But then when you have the specification, you can really let the agent loose and do this phase 2 based on Clippy, which is like in linter, and the testings. In the specification, you also define a test plan, and then it just starts working on this commit, and it's like, yeah, it needs some time, but then you can have a look and review it. And yeah, here, what we also did is like we use this skills of the reviewer and the refactoring skill on the PR, and finally, deployed that to production. Let's have a look. I think it's already open somewhere. So, as you can see, it's still open. I just built a Docker image out of that thing. It has this 1,540 lines, which is okay with all the tests and stuff. It consists of 11 commits with a summary here, what it's doing, and what UIs are updated, and so on. And maybe what is quite interesting when you have a look at the at the commits. I always design my plans in a way that we have the schema changes, if there are any, in a first commit. So this is quite concise. So it came just up with some alterations of the SQL database. And if you work with this SQLx, you can run and revert migrations as you like. And well, I'm already at migration 19, so I'm still migrating quite often. That will change in the future. And yeah, further below, you see there are some refactoring and review commits, and also some final review commit that shows, because I wasn't happy with the UI because I couldn't see that you log in and check in. So that should be something that should be done. Yeah. And here it separates the work in first adding the domain behavior, like writing a repository, writing some model structs, wiring in the roots in the web app, and then add the UI, and this one adds some unit test, I think. Yeah. And as you can see, I obviously did also let it create a lot of tests. Yeah. I think a good conclusion is like the world is changing, and these things have a lot of high potential with the right harness. I mean, everybody who's like getting into that knows that there's probably a lot of, how you say it in English, subsidizers of the costs at the moment. So it may become much more expensive to use the tools. And I think it's natural that you have to build this kind of confidence to like, like you don't simply trust an AI, you want to have this guardrails, right? So you have the confidence to ship this thing. And I'm pretty, I think people in the stock market would say bullish on AI. So I actually added a AI module to my workshop curriculum. So there are several modules getting started with Rust, async Rust. And well, there's also now an Agentic Programming module. I think tests are very important. Coverage helps you to understand that like lines of the code are tested, but actually that's maybe not enough. So there's another way to test the quality of your test suites, and that will be part of Zalan's talk. And yeah, with that said, I think we maybe have a nice discussion about agentic programming and later mutation testing then. Thank you very much.
Okay, I have one question. Yeah, first, thank you for the talk, Tim. Sorry. I would like to know what you declared in the architecture.md file or in the development.md file.
Yeah, I was, when I was starting, somehow the AI was quite, how you say it? Like, you know this, like very enthusiastic developer who starts to like introduce abstractions like, okay, you're using SQLx. Maybe you could go with an SQLite and a Postgres backend. And then you have a trade for some repository patterns. And like I just like make it quite clear that I want to have like a repository struct with like domain-related methods, for example. But I don't want to use abstractions early, because for me, at the moment, for every domain, it's completely enough to have like the repository very much linked to Postgres, because there was something which got like out of the hand. And I think it's quite interesting. If you work with AI, you can say, and that happened, well, that is garbage, I don't look at it. Like when it starts to write like 4,000 lines of code, I didn't take all the time to look through it, and often I was like just like overflowed, and also thinking like probably that's again maybe not concise enough. So I try to get these best practices there, like what patterns I use, like the repository pattern, how to separate the modules, that I have like 3 layers of testing, say unit test, integration test, and these end-to-end tests. And actually, often when I take more time to look into the code, I started to like remove 1 or 2 test cases because they were quite redundant, to be honest. And yeah, that's what I'm most really calling for architecture.md. What is also in there is a bit about the front end, because Meet and Talk is heavily server-side rendered. So the front end is Tailwind CSS, and it uses as less JavaScript as possible for now. So it uses HTMX instead. So I'm explaining this like trade-off. I want to use HTMX and have this server-side rendering because that's okay for me. And yeah, this kind of knowledge is in the architecture.md.
Just a quick question, because you said that you moved away from having the agents look at the GitHub, giving them access to GitHub directly. So what are they looking at if they review your PRs or your refactorings or your diffs? Like, do you have them run the Git commands? Do you give them the PR in some form, or what is the input to these Git-related tasks?
That's a good question. So in the harnesses, like in this harness I'm working at the moment, you can create a work tree. That's what I normally do when I have like changes like that. So you have like a parallel Git work branch. And then I don't let them use Git anymore. They are capable of like finding the main branch and just see what, like, because you are like on like some commits above, it can figure it out themselves. But what I did in the last time is like using JJ a lot, and you can give ranges of commits in JJ. So I just gave him the range of commit where it has to look, and then it also uses JJ to do the diffs, and the context is the diff in the end for the review. Yeah.
Okay, so the AI invokes JJ to get the diff.
Yes, and how is that working? Like, what it actually is, it is for me now, it's still asking a lot of questions. So it's always asking for permission, also to do testing with the databases. But let's separate that. For JJ, it's often I give permissions to use JJ new and JJ describe and JJ log, so I'm fine with that. For this other thing with the database, that's a bit more tricky because I'm working on a bigger feature branch that was sometimes merged or deployed to staging, which adds the communities, right? Like that you can have different communities besides Rust Dortmund. And there are test cases for if the database migrations do the right stuff, things like that. And actually working with the migrations was quite cumbersome at the beginning with the AI because it did get the commandos wrong to prepare a test database, stuff like that. So that's actually, I mean, I was on a dev machine. Even if it dropped something like this horror story here, it's not the end of the world, but it gets the database migration, like create database commands and so on, or the connection strings quite wrong, because yeah, there are some modes, and at least it did it, because like I have the feeling like every model like also improves somehow.
Thank you.
I've found a personal issue with Rust and agents and would be very interested if you experienced it and if you have an antidote, which is I've found that agents like to circumvent type safety by, for example, when looking at your safe string type, when they think, okay, I want to do something with it that is not intended, so I just add a new method to that struct to allow it what I want to do, and then because I don't know what's happening, so I'm always scanning the diffs for that, but it's annoying. Do you have a con strategy to prevent that?
Yeah, I think I also had this experience that like methods were added that I didn't want it to have. I think in the case when you really have like types that you want to exclude, maybe that can work to put that in the context, but it's not a guarantee, right? Yeah. Because if the context gets too big, sometimes it's not doing what is in the context. So Yeah, in the end, I'm still doing the review, right? Like I'm not completely out of the loop. Yeah. Maybe what you can do is like to abuse Clippy for that, like to find ways to give a warning on error with Clippy that finds these changes. But that's just an idea. Not I'm not sure if that works.
I'll give it a shot. Thank you.
All right. Are there any questions online? I don't hear anything. Are we still connected? Maybe not.
Just a comment about the need for testing. So we've got AI claims a lot, so we need proof for each claim. Testing is the most crucial part, which also needs more aspects than the usual things like correctness. Correctness in terms of functional behavior is not enough. Fully agentic in terms of less human interactions means also during the meta of the code, coding style conventions, architectural constraints, etc. I often tend to run a script that executes all relevant tests, proving in case the agent claims to have done all I asked for, usually starting with tests and specs before the actual code. Apparently in Java, there's a tool called ArchUnit, which checks the architectural structure of the code and further custom requirement regarding the code. Don't know if anyone's aware of an equivalent in Rust. Someone told me the other day there's like a convention in the Rust compiler of the order things get stated in. I think within a dot comment, just by convention, things are stated in a certain order, like panic spot, kind of you kind of intuit from reading it. But those kind of style guidelines, I guess, anything like that you automatically do, if you are bringing in an agent to your coding and you want that style consistency to stay, then you probably have to write it up as a rule somewhere about how you want to keep it.
Yeah, I think what's maybe quite helpful with that, if you really want to like really switch the roles of the agents, like you start a new agent and give them this other skill or this other role, so it has another context to check for that. But in the end, having good verification tools, and I think that's the reason why porting is a good candidate, is still very important to not miss something. I'm not sure if that like adds to so much value to the statement in question, but all right. Then I think we have a short break.